Friday, the final day of the week. These are the voyages of the program Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Its ongoing mission: to explore strange new movies, to seek out new bits and new edifications, to boldly go where no radio program has gone before. Elkins Movie Club. It's Elkins Movie Club. Elkins Movie Club. It's Elkins Movie Club.
Oh, I needed to hear that.
Hell yeah!
It's time for the movie club, and there he is in the lower right-hand square. I wish we had the Hollywood squares and put him in, because Kent definitely would be the Paul Lynde. He would be our center square.
Get that
I'm not exactly sure how to take that.
Oh, he was funny. I mean,
Yeah, he was also Paul Lynde.
Is that the Brady Bunch?
No, Hollywood squares.
Oh, okay.
Any square can be a Hollywood square if it tries hard enough.
That's true. I mean, they kind of reached into the bottom of the barrel when it came to,
We could just call this
some of the
squares.
Hollywood stars they put on the Hollywood squares. I mean, there was only, it's kind of hard to do that this day, with people expecting to get paid a lot more. So
Here's Bill. He lives in the Hollywood Boulevard in the dumpster behind the alley. Welcome to Hollywood Squares, Bill.
well, today we are going to attack Misery.
And hopefully we won't get attacked.
Yes, of course, the movie based on the Stephen King novel. The first thing I discovered in this I didn't realize that this was a Rob Reiner joint. This is Rob Reiner's film.
Absolutely. And it was his second Stephen King movie, because he had done Stand By Me. I believe 2 or 3 years before that. And if you're going to rank Stephen King pictures, both of those movies are probably going to be in the top 5 or 6 Stephen King movies of all time.
That means we have now done 3, because he also did Shawshank. That was his novella that he wrote. That was actually, speaking of Stand By Me, a part of the same collection. It was a book called Different Seasons. Both Shawshank and Stand By Me were in there. I read Stand By Me last year, and I saw the movie for the first time. Both very
Love
very
Stand
good.
By Me. It's a great movie.
Yeah, for sure.
But this was Rob Reiner, and so it really kind of put things into perspective, because I had a certain I had a certain expectation in this movie, but
And had you seen it?
no, I have not seen it.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And so I just had a certain expectation, but then when I found out it was him, then it made the scenes between the sheriff and his wife make a little more sense, because those were a little more lighthearted.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they were great.
When he's reading one of his books, and he makes a quip, and his wife's just like, "Cool."
Well,
so funny.
When they're driving out to investigate to see if they can find the wreckage of his car, and she puts her hand on his leg and
kind of pets it,
and he says, when we're at home, you're my wife. When we're here, you're my deputy.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty good.
I'd like to get in bed with this sheriff.
And that was intentional, right? To make it have some humor and some satire almost in it. And what they left out, which you can't really do, is if you've read the book, there's all this interior monologue on the part of Paul, the writer, who talk about writing and about what's going on in his head. Well, you can't really put that on a screen, and it would have made it a completely different movie. So they pretty much dumped all that, and then Reiner made it kind of funny and really disturbing all at the same time.
Ken, along those lines, should we explain this movie for those who don't, I guess, know what it is?
Yeah, it's very simple. But
a writer finishes a novel. He has a little Dom Perignon. He leaves where he is staying. He gets caught in a blizzard. His car crashes. He crashes
a gorgeous 65 Mustang, driving it in the snow.
He is, quote unquote, saved by the character played by Kathy Bates. And sure enough, he's not really saved because she starts torturing him and wants him to write.
Yeah, he's got
She's
some
a
terrible injuries,
Psycho
Yeah.
super fan.
but she used to be a nurse.
Yeah.
So she was able to nurse him back to health.
Back to health.
But because his legs are broken and he can't,
And she's
he's
lying to him. Oh, the
immobilized.
phones are down and we can't get out of the area. Yada,
Gets
yada,
him
yada.
just healthy enough to live, but not healthy
Yeah.
enough to get anywhere.
All right, so we're gonna spoil. Ken, I want to go right into the scene that I know people, is probably super memorable for everybody. It sounds like you've read the book.
This isn't the pegging scene,
Yeah.
right?
It is that scene.
No.
Okay, so when she and this is on the Wikipedia page, it's been written about before. She decides to, in the movie, they decide to have her hit him in the ankles with a sledgehammer with a 4x4 right in between his ankles. Just destroying him. In the book, she saws off one of his feet. And ends up doing it to one of his fingers as well. So I remember.
And there's no sledgehammer breaking at all. That's the only thing.
No, that is made up for the movie.
So I'm wondering, Kent, because it looked like they decided to do this because had they kept it like it was in the book, she would have been a lot more evil, and they wanted her to be somebody that you could sympathize with a little bit, because that was my takeaway is, as bad as she is in the movie, I thought that she was much more evil in the book. And I'm wondering what you made ultimately now 30 years removed, 31 years removed of that decision. Was it, in your opinion, the right decision to do so?
Yes, for that reason and for another reason. That was convincing, right? When she hits him with the sledgehammer, that is like, right?
I had a visceral reaction.
They pull it off.
Yeah.
Try doing that with 1990 technology and cutting somebody's foot off.
Oh,
Yeah, you could know, even when they were beating each other up at the end, all the blood that was on her face was like bright cherry red. Like if they would have had to saw somebody apart, they would have just had like maraschino cherries flying around all over the place or something. It
Exactly.
would not have worked real well.
I mean, I suppose couldn't they have? I mean, you can do that
And
without
hide it a little bit.
Yeah, where it's like
You start
where
it.
the camera moves just to his face and you're watching his
Yeah.
facial contortions and he's screaming
Yeah.
while you can hear the sawing in the background.
But what made this movie work was you saw all the horrible stuff.
Okay,
Right.
sure.
And so if you got to that point and then pulled back, you'd kind of chickened out almost, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, 'cause-
this
yeah.
is, if you take out the quote violent scenes and the scene where she was repeating all the profanity that was in his book, for the book that she ended up burning, or he ended up burning. If you take those out, it would be a PG movie. So you got this sort of PG movie with these R-rated violent scenes in it. And that's part of what made the movie work and create kind of its tension. And if you'd have had to pull back because you couldn't do that sort of pivotal thing, right, I don't think it would have worked. And I agree about it made her less evil, right?
Yeah.
Not that she isn't pretty bad,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
she would have been entirely evil.
It was more
cut off his
mentally
foot.
ill than it was just like satanic.
Because
and
she also
full
runs
acting.
over somebody with a lawnmower in the book. She runs over the sheriff. That's how she
Yeah,
kills the
that's how
sheriff.
she
in the
kills
book.
the sheriff.
She's like she is a horror. I mean, she's like we say, she's bad in the movie. She's like somehow even more worse.
Yeah,
worse in the book.
I like the fact that they did it this way because it's I don't want to say it's more conventional, but it is, if you're trying to immobilize someone, it's easier to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And
It is more realistic.
and I think it's more realistic because that's the thing about the movie that kind of works for me is that you could, even though it's rather fantastic, the circumstances of all this, there is some believability to it where you get these obsessed fans. And the reason she's obsessed is because she loves this character, Misery.
Mm-hmm.
And in his last book, the one that he is just about to get published, that he's carrying with him in the car, she's allowed to read it, and he kills off the character, and she drives her insane. And so she basically makes him rewrite the story while he is being imprisoned. And I think all of that works together more in the realm of the psychological psycho super fan than it does if she'd just pulled out the bone saw and just
Plus,
you know,
it's in such
start
a
wavering
memorable
away.
way. There's been
It is
how
very
many
memorable.
How many movies have you? There's plenty of movies where people get limbs sawed off in some way or form.
This is more
There's
memorable.
no movie where there's a 4x4 set in between someone's ankles and smashed with a sledgehammer. Everybody knows that scene.
And the fact that she goes
It's
through
extremely memorable.
she goes through talking about, you know, in the diamond mines, you know,
Yeah, they had.
so she
They
tells
went out of the way to do a
backstory.
backstory about it.
Exactly. So I think it works really well.
It was a great way to go about it.
And it is that scene. If you look up the listing of great horror movie scenes, that scene is always in there.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Even though this isn't, I don't consider this a straight up horror movie by any stretch of the imagination, but that scene is always on that list.
Well, what makes it even more terrifying is the nonchalant way she's doing it.
Yes.
She's not in there all psychotic like she is in a few other
Hemming
scenes.
and hawing.
She's kind of just like, now I'm doing this for your own good. This is she's
Yes.
like she's doing him a favor, and that makes it that much more terrifying because you're just like, good Lord, she is insane.
Yeah.
Yes.
Obviously, this was the movie that brought Kathy Bates to mainstream attention. She won the Academy Award for it, and of course, it launched her career.
Only Stephen King, adaptation to ever win an Academy Award. That one role.
And she gets a lot of accolades, which rightfully so. I mean,
she's very
she
good.
plays the character extremely well, and I think it works. It works that this was a coming out role, that it wasn't cast with somebody more noteworthy.
And part of it is people didn't want to do the movie, right? I believe I remember, I didn't read anything, but I remember like 15 guys turned down the role that Khan played before he took it.
Here's the list.
Yeah, I had it written down too.
William Hurt, Kevin Kline, Michael Douglas, Harrison Ford, Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, Richard Dreyfuss, Gene Hackman, and Robert Redford. Warren Beatty was also interested, but apparently the post-production on the Dick Tracy film went too long, and he couldn't participate. But yeah, it was a who's who list at that time of A-list actors.
What about her being kind of unknown at the time? It even works into the favor of the character because she's supposed to be this nobody out in the mountains that no one ever sees or knows about. And she was especially that as a person as well. So it worked in favor of the character.
Interestingly, she was unknown but highly respected because was a great stage actress. Okay. And I'm not sure why I know all this. I know. It's because of she was in the Alexander Payne movie with Nicholson.
She did get naked in that one.
About Schmidt. Right.
Yeah, I sadly remember that. Yes.
And so I wrote a piece about her then. She was a highly respected New York stage actress, and two of the stage plays that she starred in got made into movies, but like people like Michelle Pfeiffer stole her part, and so she couldn't do the movie because these big time actresses took the part. And so this was her first real chance at starring in a movie. And then she went on to play, interestingly enough, another Stephen King movie and another really good performance, which may be as good as this one, Dolores Claiborne, which is a murder story.
Okay. I want to ask about the actors because we just listed off all these different actors that turned down the role, and eventually it ends up with James Caan. When I was looking over this list, and anytime I see something like this, I always envision, okay, what this movie would have felt like if this guy would have been in it instead of this guy, and back and forth. When I looked at that list of all those different actors, I think what helps this movie is at least I had not been familiar with James Caan playing characters that are particularly vulnerable.
Yeah, very understated role in a way.
Because he never had.
Right. Harrison Ford, for example, even in all of Harrison Ford's manly characters, Indiana Jones was very vulnerable. Han Solo was vulnerable. But I think what helped this movie was I'm looking at Sonny Corleone getting. I mean, we saw him get Swiss cheesed, but I mean, for him to actually have to live through all of this, I thought it helped the film, and also to envision him as a writer. This novelist who writes these, for lack of a better term, Harlequin style romance novels or whatever they call it. I thought, that it kind of works for me here. And so I know he didn't. I didn't know he didn't get the accolades that she did, but I thought his being in the movie helped it.
Well, he didn't get the accolades, but it salvaged his career because he was headed. It'd been 18 years since The Godfather, yes. And he kind of went up, and then the long, slow decline, and this picked him back up. So it did do that. And I think you're right that, because he's this tough guy, right? He never not played that. And he comes and plays this unexpected role. I remember vaguely watching that in the screening, right? All those years ago, and just being, when we walked out of there going like, that was unbelievably great. And we were talking as much about him as her when it was over, because of being so different than what you would expect him to play. And it showed that he can actually act a little bit and not just be the tough guy.
He's not typecast.
Yeah.
Kent, I mentioned when John was bringing up Kathy Bates, is the only time that somebody's ever won an Oscar from a film based on a Stephen King book. We just went through all of these actors that turned down this role before it was landed on him. Do you think that was the case, that all these guys turned down the role because of the association of it being a Stephen King book, of the expectation of it having some of those fanciful type storylines and being supernatural? And because this is right on the heels of It coming out, of course, The Stand, like all these books in the 80s. Do you think that was the case, or was it something else?
I think that was part of it. The other part of it is a lot of Stephen King movies are hot garbage.
That too.
And, you don't really need to get tarred with that if you're, Dustin Hoffman or somebody.
Right.
And then, remember, it was Rob Reiner. Remember, he wasn't.
He should bring some people in.
Yeah, but he wasn't exactly the superstar of direction at that time. He'd done Spinal Tap and he'd done Stand By Me, basically, that were notable movies. Yeah. So it wasn't like you had somebody. I'm trying to think of a director of that era that would have instantly drawn somebody, but all of those things I think contributed to it. But I also think it very easily could have had a financial element too. Mm-hmm. I don't think this was the biggest budget movie in history. And, you're at that time, those other guys were getting handsomely paid for their work. The one thing that I did want to throw in here go full-blown movie critic on you.
Okay.
Is one of the reasons that this movie still works is the cinematography, and it's very Hitchcockian, right?
Yes.
They show you these little elements and then big and a lot of close-up, very Hitchcockian cinematography that adds to the sort of thriller, mystery, whatever you want to call it, element to it. Then you inject some of that humor, and that kind of sets with that. And the cinematographer on this movie was Barry Sonnenfeld, who went on to become a pretty good comedy director. He did the Men in Black movies. He did the Addams Family movies. I'm trying to think what he's done most recently. Anyway, Barry Sonnenfeld was a cinematographer, and when I watched it the other night, I was like, okay, this looks really good. How it looked, how it worked, and then it was like, okay, this is like Hitchcock. And then I waited for the credits to see who the cinematographer was, and I went, oh, okay. This guy.
It reminded me of that as well. The very still kind of scenes of of the camera and everything happening behind it, the close-ups. It's funny you said that, because obviously him being in a wheelchair and not being able to go anywhere and all this stuff make it very. It reminded me of Rear Window throughout it. I was like, this is a lot like, and I had seen it before, but I hadn't seen Rear Window before I'd seen Misery the first time. So yeah, it reminded me of that a lot as well. I loved it on a second. I didn't remember a lot of it
Misery?
the first time, but yeah, I was a big fan.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
The scene that really struck me as this is pure Hitchcock is when she makes him burn the manuscript, because she comes out and wheels that grill in there, and opens it up, and then when you see him, when she shows it, they focus in on the page while she's squirting the lighter fluid on it.
See the words underneath it from like the second page. I thought that was really cool.
That's straight up Hitchcock right there. And then
the scene that I remember thinking that was when he first got out of the room, and the way the camera
when he knocks over
moved or didn't move,
Yeah.
you could see that something was coming before it was coming. You just didn't know what it was,
Right?
With the way that the camera was positioned in a room, whether it was to see the like memory book in the background or the penguin before he hit it, the way that they arranged the camera and where Khan was going to go reminded me of that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
No, I thought it was a really good movie and enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, me too.
And it still holds up very well, obviously all these years later, because
it plays pretty interesting in a time when we've all been locked up in a house having to work.
Yes, it really is.
And even though in a time with cell phones and whatever else right now, if you're stuck in a cabin in the mountains, you probably don't have a way out or a way to communicate with someone, because cell phones aren't going to work. If there's no internet, you're screwed. So it still very much works.
When he grabs the phone and he starts dialing and then he picks it up, he realizes, it's
Just
not hooked
hollow.
up to anything.
There's no
It's
guts in
hollow.
it. Yeah, there's no guts in
I
the
thought
phone.
I also laughed at the very beginning for the opening credits because it set the tone really well. It had that very like terrifying like font, the like red like horror font.
Right.
It had this like super upbeat like blues rocky thing with this Mustang flying around the mountains and James Caan just like just rocking out to this with all of this horrifying script coming across the screen. It made me laugh right off the bat. And then that's when I saw
Walker and the All-Stars.
I saw Rob Reiner's name and I was like, okay, this
it's
makes
like
sense.
the opposite of the beginning of The Shining, where that is just like it's flying and it's the music and the fun.
know
You're
what
like,
you're in for.
Okay, I'm in for a horror movie. Yeah, in a way, if you didn't know this is a thriller or psychological terror, whatever you want to call it, you'd be like, what the hell's going on with this font and this music?
The juxtaposition
right now?
was hilarious.
Pretty good.
No, it was pretty good. If we don't count Shawshank, best Stephen King movie.
Carrie.
I've never seen Carrie.
Ooh,
I need to watch
I
that.
saw it as a kid.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
It's
And it still holds up.
Now, I liked. It was very disjointed at times. I really did like the remake of It, the first one, more than the second one, It Chapter 1, when they were the kids. I thought that was really, really fun. I did like Stand By Me. I know we talked about it earlier. I need to watch more, honestly. I haven't, but like Ken said, so many of them are just so bad that I've just kind of
You're kind of afraid to pick one.
Yeah, like a few years ago when Dark Tower came out, it was like,
it got horrible reviews.
Yeah, because I was interested in it at first when I saw who was in it, and then everyone was like, never mind, don't go see this movie.
Yeah.
The other, The Shining is obviously really good. And what's the one that Cronenberg directed? Brain Dead. David Cronenberg did a Stephen King movie. And what's that?
When was that? What era was that in?
Oh, it would have been in the 90s, I believe.
Green Mile?
No, it was before
Dead
that.
Zone?
Okay.
The Dead Zone, maybe.
The Dead Zone, that's it.
The Dead
That's
Zone.
it. And that's a really good movie, in part because I don't know, you guys know Cronenberg? You know who he is?
The name.
Yeah, I know the name.
Name's familiar.
Yeah, Canadian director who makes really horrifying, like psychological movies. And now his son is doing the same thing. He did the movie adaptation of William Burroughs' Naked Lunch. And you've seen that once, it'll hang with you forever.
Nice.
Cronenberg makes really creepy movies. And that really worked.
Those are all great suggestions, but there is only one answer. and it's I hope this is the right drop.
Find out.
But it's the movie that I hope gave us this.
Uplinks, underground. Uplinks, underground.
No, it's not the right
not
one.
the one.
It's not the right one. What's this one? Is this the one?
No, that's
He's a
probably
man.
yeah.
Oh,
And he's,
running.
running.
Bull Durham.
This
of course, we're talking about, hey, Killian, here is Sub-Zero. Now, Blade Zero. We're talking about the running man. The running man.
I've never seen that. Yeah.
Close second. Maximum Overdrive, Kent. I
Yeah,
know
baby.
you love that one.
Yeah, if those that we're talking about is the top of the Stephen King, Maximum Overdrive, which he directed, was the bottom of the barrel.
It's a bad movie. I love it, but it's a bad movie. I do like, in all seriousness, I love Christine.
That's a good one.
Christine is a good one. I've
I've never seen the
whole.
whole thing. I've caught my dad liked it, so it would be on TV every once in a while. I think.
Yeah.
All right. One last thing.
Yeah.
King forever and ever would not talk about what inspired Misery and was there a Psycho fan that came after him or something?
Oh.
And he said, no, it was about cocaine. She was cocaine. He was so messed up on drugs on the coke so that's his cocaine story.
Okay. Crazy.
That is crazy.
It's amazing how artists can turn like a drug into a character like that. That is,
Isn't it?
sometimes I'm like, I'm pretty creative, and then I'm like, never mind. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Not at all.
All right. Well,
I one last Stephen King thing, which has nothing much to do with what we're talking about, is he is a great writer, and if you want to read a book about writing that will really can be helpful for you, if you want to, he wrote a book that's called On Writing, and it's fabulous. I did a course maybe 10 years ago, and that was the textbook for this graduate writing course. Was you walked in and it's like Stephen King, and it's really a great thing. So like I say, that has nothing to do with movies, but it's really he's a really great writer.
I love Stephen King. I hadn't read Kent a book of his until like a decade ago, and now I probably read 10 to 15. He is just the way he can create a world so quickly too, where like a character shows up on page 3 and already by page 5 it's like, oh, okay, I know exactly who this person is.
well, for next week, I don't know if you have reviewed it yet, Kent, but the sequel to Coming to America is out.
I haven't seen it, so we will be watching it at the same time.
Yes.
I have to watch it, so there we go.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the first one, so I'm going to watch the first one. And then I'll watch
The first one is also streaming on Amazon.
Uh-huh.
How have you not seen the first one?
I don't know.
I haven't either.
Oh, thank you, Stibbs, for being on my side with this.
That's the young.
You gentlemen have missed out American culture.
I've seen a couple scenes from it that are very funny, but yeah,
All right,
very, very funny movie.
You guys get double the homework.
I'm watching both. I'll watch the first one.
But
I'm gonna have to.
But Coming to America,
Get it?
that's how they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
With pretty much everybody back from the original cast, I think
Folks!
most of them. It is new and it is streaming now on Amazon Prime. So we'll review a new movie next week.
Perfect.
Nice.
Perfect. Yeah, it actually, I think, started just today.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I think it was. Yeah,
I think they.
I think it was midnight.
I looked at it. It was
Yeah.
actually up last night
Yeah.
before midnight.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of snuck it in.
When I went to
before
HBO
midnight.
Max, I saw it on my Prime home screen.
Yeah. So that's what we'll do next week. Kent, have a great weekend, and
Thank you, Kent.
thanks for the time as always.
Yes, and I only one more Nebraska basketball game.
Hey, there you go.
Thank God.
Well, what if they host an NIT? Oh wait, no, they're not playing in the NIT. NIT's in Texas.
You have to be above 500 to do that.
Well, the whole NIT is in Texas this year, so
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
fun.
So you've been spared.
So they make a run in the
what kind of
tournament.
torture? Think about this. What kind of torture would it be if you're the AP writer, whoever, who has to cover the whole NIT? Just like, no.
Do the short straw on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, not good. All right, Kent, we'll talk to you next week.
I
See
can't.
you later.
There he is,
Kent.
Kent Wolgamott, Lincoln Journal star, coming to America, the sequel, streaming on Amazon Prime. We'll review it next week. Creighton is tied Omaha 2-2 in the fourth.
Omaha.
And Purdue took the lead against Nebraska, but Nebraska has tied it 3-3 in the fourth. So we're tied everywhere.
Omaha.
We're tied
Nebraska.
everywhere. We will continue with more coming up in the happy hour. The Big Ten doing Big Ten things.
Big Ten.
Yep. The Big Ten's being naughty.
Also, we're drinking beer.
And we're drinking beer. Thank God.
16:20
1620 The Zone.